So just as a little bit of background, since 2013, we reinvigorated our what was then Historic Review Board and is now our Heritage and Landmark Commission. And little by little, we started to cobble together projects so that we could apply for certified local government grant work. And then we learned a lot along the way. We got really great volunteers who put time and energy. Carol is a great example of the kinds of volunteers that we love to have as a city because she just wholeheartedly jumps into projects and helps to make things happen. And so we kind of got to the point where we realized we had done a lot of work and it was important to look towards the future and figure out what our planning efforts look like. So there was a request for proposals and we found Northwest Vernacular with Katie Pratt and her colleagues. And so they really did a great job of taking a look at what we've done in the past, what the future looks like. They did some community stakeholder interviews, which is always most important, I think, to me and my department to make sure that we're hearing the voices of the people that we're serving. So I think that Katie and her team has done a wonderful job, as well as our Heritage and Landmark Commission. So I will turn it over to Katie.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen with you guys, so just bear with me for a moment while I get that up. Okay, so can you see the PowerPoint? Great. Okay. Thank you all for giving me this opportunity to discuss the Historic Preservation Plan with you. Tonight, I'll be providing an overview of the plan, both its process and its contents, and providing a time for you all to ask questions. It's a lot of material, so I'm going to do the best I can to cover it all in the time we have, but I hope that you'll spend some time looking at the actual plan document. I wanted to give you a quick overview of the process we followed in developing the plan and the community survey we conducted before getting into the specifics of the plan. I will focus specifically on the vision, the mission, and then the goals and policies we are recommending to help propel the program forward. And then we'll have some time for questions. Before I get into that though, Carol Palmer, who we've mentioned, she served as the project manager and liaison between us and the consultants and then everyone else with the city. And she's gonna provide a summary real quick or make a quick statement about the plan before I launch into my spiel, if that's okay, Carol.
Sure. I just wanted to recap sort of how did we get to this particular point. In 2017, the Oregon Heritage Organization did a review of our certified local government status, and one of the recommendations that came out of that was that we do a historic preservation plan. I was not familiar with those, but I talked to some folks in the planning departments in other communities that are kind of comparable in size to Canby and looked at some of theirs. These were communities that have recently done historic preservation plans, and we got great feedback. I took that back to the board. We decided that this was going to be our #1 project for 2019-2020. Two things that were really appealing was that, first of all, it would give us as a board a roadmap forward. And the second thing that was very appealing was the fact that the comp plan had been in a big discussion sort of citywide about where we were headed with a new comp plan. And a historic preservation element is a part of a comp plan, which means that the city can now check that box. That puppy's paid for. And luckily for us, we were able to score 2 grants from the Kinsman Foundation and from the National Park Service through the State Historic Preservation Organization. So over half of this project was paid for by grant funding. So Katie, I'll turn it back to you.
All right, thanks, Carol. I wanted to reiterate a couple of items that were in the RFP that went out about the preservation plan, and that they did a great job in crafting that RFP, and they really they wanted the plan to identify strategies to do these 6 things. One is to promote preservation as a tool for revitalizing Canby's unique neighborhoods and historic commercial areas, to engage the community in historic preservation efforts, to enhance local tourism and cultural activities, to prepare Canby for National Heritage Area status, and the National Park Service's requirements for National Heritage Area Management Plans to provide appropriate guidance to elected and appointed officials in making development decisions that could affect the character of the community, and to strengthen the city's existing historic preservation program. So I'm using the term historic preservation a lot, and you may not be as familiar with what that means, and even really understanding what a historic preservation plan is. So historic preservation is a movement in planning that seeks to preserve older buildings, structures, and areas, recognizing their inherent value, and also as a way to tie a place's history to its population and culture. Historic preservation helps ensure the heritage that enriches our lives remains for future generations. Canby is a special community with a rich and unique history, and historic preservation basically recognizes that yes, history is important, and it's incredibly valuable to know your community's history. And that history can really resonate and be more powerful when it's connected to a tangible place, like a building, a park, a neighborhood. So it just allows us to connect with our community's history in a more meaningful way. And so then the last almost year, I've had the pleasure of working in Canby, and it became so clear to me that Canby's history matters so much to your community. Everyone I spoke with, from staff to stakeholders, and even reviewing the community survey results, made it really clear that folks are interested in knowing and sharing Canby's story. The whole concept of Canby's story came up consistently throughout this process, and I thought that was really special and unique. Not everyone talks about their city and community that way, so I thought that was really special. So now that we know what historic preservation is, what is a historic preservation plan? It has a number of sections, but the main priority is to develop a vision for historic preservation in the city and a series of goals, policies, and actions that will help the city pursue that vision. And as both Janie and Carol mentioned, the timing of this is important because as Canby grows and has been experiencing growth over the last several years and continues to grow, the preservation plan is really critical during these kinds of periods because it helps shape so that you can keep things for future generations. And the HLC has been making a lot of progress in educating and engaging the community, and this will help provide that kind of long-term plan for them to be thinking about that. So in working through developing the plan, my colleague Spencer Howard and I did a drive-through of the city. We were able to do this before we started any other work, which really helped us get a feel for the city. And a few things immediately struck us in this process. First of all, you guys have a really lovely and walkable downtown. It's also fantastic that even though you constructed a new building or new buildings for your city hall and library, that you kept those downtown instead of annexing them somewhere else within the city, because that keeps downtown really walkable and keeps bringing people downtown. And also, I can never stop talking about this, but the fact that you have a grocery store downtown, and that even though it's not in a historic building, it's a heritage business. I wish my downtown had a grocery store so that I could actually live there and walk to the grocery store if I needed to. I think that's really great. And then that keeps the community and investment in downtown, which is so valuable in keeping it walkable and keeping people connected to those historic buildings. So after that kind of drive-through tour we did in a kickoff meeting we had with the HLC and some city staff members, Spencer began a background review of the preservation ordinance, as well as some related ordinances and past preservation efforts. Well, we could have just focused in really clearly on just the preservation ordinance. We felt it was important to see the other ordinances and how they support or don't support historic preservation, because preservation really works best when it's interdisciplinary and not siloed. It's people that practice in the historic preservation field are historians like me, planners, real estate developers, architects, people in trades. It's such a diverse field in that sense, and so it works really well when it's brought into all those city departments and areas within the city. So then we began a community survey just to get general feedback on preservation. We had a public meeting as well, but not everyone wants to show up to meetings, as you guys are aware, I'm sure. So this was a way to try to get broader reach. We used SurveyMonkey, and we also created paper copies that were distributed to a number of locations around the city. And the survey was available in both English and Spanish. I then did a historic context overview of the city's history, not meant to be a complete and full history of the city, but mostly to understand development patterns, like why buildings were constructed where they were, why they were constructed in the way that they were, to think about historic building forms and also architectural styles. And then after doing all of this work, we compiled a vision and a mission with supporting goals, policies, and proposals. Before I get into the nitty-gritty of the plan with the vision and goals, I wanted to share the results from a few of the questions we asked in the community survey. Judy Jaros, who's an HLC member, did the analysis for us that's included in the preservation plan. And the full survey results are in the plan in Appendix A, which I believe begins on page 87. We had 168 total responses to the survey, both online and paper. And with Canby's population at just under 18,000, SurveyMonkey said that gave us about a 95% confidence level and an 8% margin of error. So this is just meant to be a small snapshot of the folks who completed the survey. This first question was just trying to check off kind of what boxes people roughly fit into. So 89% of the people that filled out the survey actually live in Canby. Some people may just work there or live outside the city limits. 87% utilized downtown Canby businesses. That was really exciting to see. 65% were interested in local history, which was wonderful. I did find it interesting that only 7%, so that was about 11 responses, were historic property owners, which may be the case, or sometimes it makes me think, what do people consider as historic? Particularly here in the Northwest, a lot of times people think of old as buildings that are back east or much, much older than what we have here. Whereas in the historic preservation field, we use 50 years as the marker for what's historic. So every year, another slate of buildings becomes historic. And so kind of making people think about, oh, those mid-century ranches, those might be historic and have value too, and start kind of rethinking that paradigm that they might have about historic buildings. Another question we asked was, prior to this survey, did they know that the city had a historic preservation program with a Heritage and Landmarks Commission? So slightly, 51% said no, they did not, which to me as the consultant demonstrates that more outreach needs to be done. But I know that the HLC was actually really encouraged by the statistic because it meant that they had been making progress in reaching folks. And also, you reached a bunch of people that didn't know that you even had a historic preservation program, and now they do. So that was at least successful. You can check that off. Like, now we have that many more people that know that you have a program. And the final question that I'm going to talk about tonight is, why do you think it's important to preserve and celebrate Canby's heritage? Because we don't want to assume that everyone has the same motive behind valuing heritage. Not that one motive is better than the other, but for some people, they want to keep old buildings because it's nostalgic, and that's where they grew up. Others feel like old buildings provide an authentic feeling for communities, and others think that it's a draw for their business. There's cachet to being in a historic building. So we kind of wanted to see how people felt about preserving historic buildings and heritage in Canby. And 58% said that they liked it because it raises awareness of Canby's history and emphasizes community pride. And 45% said that they support the retention of community character. And 61% said that it helps us value our past and share it with future generations. Okay, so the vision and mission statements. After we did the community survey and that background program review and historic context, we put together a vision and mission statement for the program. It's kind of aspirational idea. The vision that we came up with was a vibrant Canby that knows, preserves, and shares its heritage for the good of the community and its future. We think Canby is vibrant, but we want it to continue to be vibrant, and we want people that live in Canby to know its history, preserve it, and share it. I think that's really valuable. And the mission that we came up with is to support and develop an inclusive understanding of Canby's place within traditional tribal lands and the many histories that shaped the community's unique heritage to foster a collective approach. That was one thing that came up in a lot of our community survey write-in results and in conversations, is that people seem really hungry just to know the story of Canby and all the variety of stories of Canby, and which is different from other projects where I've worked on personally, where a community's like, nope, this is our story. They don't want to deviate from it. They have the idea of what it is. And I felt like it was really exciting to be in Canby and hear from people that there are people that know a lot of the history and the stories in Canby, but they just wanted to know more. And that people that don't know it wanted to know more. And I thought that was really fascinating. And we wanted to make sure that that was included in the mission to kind of reflect that desire to know the story and share it. So with that vision and mission, we identified 3 goals to support that. The first one is to preserve and strengthen Canby's identity. The second is to utilize preservation to inform city decision-making. And the third is to foster public understanding of historic preservation's community benefit. In thinking through the first goal, to preserve and strengthen Canby's identity, as I mentioned, it was very clear in all of our conversations that Canby's residents really love the community and they want to know more about its history, and that they desire to maintain Canby's small town charm. Historic preservation can help to retain and reinforce Canby's character, a character that includes the historic built environment, as well as agricultural lands, social and cultural history, patterns of commerce and industry, and diverse populations. And so this goal really seeks to move Canby from just a nostalgic remembrance towards active engagement to preserving the past and drawing on its history to inform and shape future development. And so then the 4 policies that we developed under this goal, policy 1A is to prioritize the preservation of agricultural lands within and around the city. We felt that managing urban growth to both accommodate that growth and maintain that small agricultural community character is really important, and it makes Canby super desirable to live and work there. And it's such a sense of place when you arrive in the city that you drive through that agricultural land, and that's part of the heritage of Canby and why it is the city that it is today. The policy 1B is to identify, evaluate, educate, and nominate historic properties. In order to know the story, you have to identify places that are associated with that, and evaluate them, afford them historic designation if they meet specific criteria, and then educate the public about those places. Policy 1C is to update the comp plan to reflect community vision for historic preservation. So in order for the historic preservation program to succeed, it needs to be supported through other city policies, and we have some recommendations about that. And then policy 1D under this goal is to support the retention of historic buildings through compatible uses. This policy recognizes that historic buildings can be endangered when they are vacant, or if their original use doesn't match up with contemporary building uses. So we wanted to be able to identify some action items that might help with that moving forward. The second goal is to utilize historic preservation to inform city decision-making. I've said this a couple times, I'll keep saying it, you'll notice it's a theme. Historic preservation is best when it's not siloed, when it's interdisciplinary. And so historic preservation success in Canby, which you guys just don't, you're not a huge enough city to have multiple full-time staff or even a single full-time staffer to just do historic preservation work. So the program to be really successful, it just needs to be understood by other departments within the city, so that people are aware of it and that it can really function well, in support of other programs too. So the policies under this goal, 2A is to connect the HLC with all city departments and commissions as well as city council, just so that historic preservation is something that people, whether it's you guys or other departments, that if someone asks you, you know how to say what it is and can connect someone to it. I think that's really valuable, so that it isn't something that's forgotten by a lot of people. Policy 2B, this is a really easy one, is just to recognize May as Historic Preservation Month every year. Nationally, May is Historic Preservation Month. Communities around the country do that. It can be as simple as a city proclamation at a city council meeting, just encouraging people to talk about specific historic places during that time. So this is a really straightforward policy, and a lot of cities do this. Policy 2C, integrate sustainability measures with historic preservation. A lot of times the new kind of sustainable measures and environmental responsibility seems to indicate that you should throw out a lot of old things and put in new things that are more energy efficient. And in historic preservation, we believe that the greenest building is the one that's already built, and that repurposing old buildings preserves that energy already represented in existing buildings, embodied energy, so that it reduces the need for new construction and the consumption of new materials and resources. And so being thoughtful about historic preservation is very green and sustainable. Need to make sure that that's incorporated with other green measures by the city. And then the final policy under this goal is to ensure new construction and development reinforces the historic character of the city. The scale and variety of the historic buildings in Canby, along with its walkability, your open space, they really inform the character that make up Canby. And it's just something to be mindful of as new construction and development progresses within the city. All right, the third policy or goal is to foster public understanding of historic preservation's community benefit. So it's clear that the story of Canby is really important to residents, but it's unclear how they understand historic preservation within that story. And so by promoting historic preservation, you can demonstrate to the community that preserving the historic built environment is more than just beautiful architecture, but it's a way to help Canby thrive because it promotes smart growth, human scale density, environmental responsibility, and then you want people to feel connected to the places that they live, work, and play because that encourages community. The 4 policies that we developed under this goal, the first one is to promote a broad understanding of historic preservation and its benefits. And this is basically just to continue to encourage public outreach and education on the matter so that people can know about it and then participate in the program as well. Policy 3B, to support interpretive efforts. Preservation can be more than just reusing old buildings, encouraging heritage tourism and promoting sustainability. It can also be a way to educate the public. And interpretation aims to help people understand and appreciate the importance of a place. And so it's a great avenue for education. Policy 3C, to foster relationships within and outside the city with heritage-related and civic-related organizations. Basically, historic preservation will be more broadly understood if it's connected in with other organizations throughout the city, and that's really valuable. And our 4th policy under this goal is to encourage integration of historic preservation in school curriculum, which I know is easier said than done. But we just wanted to put this as encouragement because I think we can all agree that when something is started early, with our youngest generation, and they're encouraged to value something, that sticks with them and that it lasts for future generations. I forgot to mention this earlier, but one of the things that I was going to talk about briefly is the Willamette Falls and Landings National Heritage Area. That was one of the things that we did a review of as part of the Historic Preservation Plan, because it's something that's happening and you guys are a part of it, but sometimes there's uncertainty as to what to do and what that actually means. So it's in the plan, but we did make some recommendations to help guide how to identify assets within Canby and around Canby to support broader heritage area work. And we organized our recommendations by natural resources, cultural resources, and educational resources. And ultimately, we feel like you guys are in a great position to support interpretation of and public education of the significance of the proposed heritage area because of those natural, cultural, and educational resources. Natural resources, the Willamette River, the Molalla River, Parrot Creek and the Prairie Lands, as well as the farmland north and east of the city. Those are great resources and an amazing opportunity. Cultural resources, you guys can be a great center for interpretive work and as a destination for folks traveling into the heritage area to learn more about it. Your relationships with area tribes are great, as well as the Clackamas County Fair is a wonderful resource that you guys have within this city. It's a great spot. The farms nearby, not necessarily within the city, but as you guys are a launching point to go out to those places, like the Swan Island Dahlia Farm. And then you also have, your own historic resources within the city, and the Heritage Trail, exploring community connections. All these are really great resources for you guys. And then the educational resources, you have the Historical Society Museum, which is wonderful. And again, the Clackamas County Fair. These are great places to promote Canby's history and make that connection with the heritage area. So before we get to questions, which will be coming up here, the next slide, what's happening next? Basically, the HLC is going to ask you to adopt the preservation plan at a city council at some meeting some point in the future. Just so spend some time looking through it. That would be great. And be familiar with it. But I just wanted to highlight a few themes that we, Spencer and I with Northwest Vernacular, and doing the work that came up to us for you to just kind of be thinking about as you read the plan and as you're thinking about this. One, to incorporate preservation throughout city policies, that again, it works best when it's interdisciplinary. That as you guys establish a vision for future Canby, think about historic preservation, because it really connects in with decisions about land use, quality of life, housing, density, economic development, and urban growth areas. To understand the role that agricultural heritage holds in Canby's future, because it ties in with agricultural lands, the legacy farms that surround the community, the heritage area, as well as the fairgrounds, and to also think about Canby's density and like what type and form of commercial and residential infill you guys desire for the city, and how this ties in with the long-term vision, Canby's character, as well as the economic resiliency of downtown and the surrounding agricultural character. So with that, I'm ready for any questions that you guys may have for me. Unless you need me to view the PowerPoint again, because I think you guys all have access to it on your own devices. I was going to stop sharing my screen so that we just can have a conversation about this. So does anyone have any questions for me?
I'm just going to start real quick, Katie, and just say thank you so much for your work on this. This is very detailed, and I think it's really encapsulating much of the work that the Historic Landmark Commission has been, and our Historic Society have been trying to really move forward here over the last couple of years. And so I think there's a lot of great information here, and I think there's a lot of great takeaways for us to start implementing and looking at how we can, celebrate Canby's history and bring it to life in a lot of different ways. So I really appreciate that piece very much.
Oh, thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah, Councilor Parker, I know you probably have a series of questions.
Well, for Sandy, our planning director, I'm going to be relying upon you as this eventually gets to the council for your technical review of this on whether there are some specific language things that need to be addressed. Policy 1A, I wonder about whether we have any business preserving ag land inside our city limits. I think all of that is pretty much zoned residential, but again, that's the sort of thing, Sandy, I'd like you to take a look at. Also, Katie, there's no reason for you to know, but I'm also on the Clackamas County Fair Board. And Carol's been very helpful reminding me that some of those buildings out there are historic. We just went through a master plan, a lot of planning, and now we're piecing together what we're going to do first. And someone's going to need to hold our hand, because there are people out there who just want to tear down those old buildings and put up some new ones. I'm particularly interested in trying to restore the main building, but that's got a lot of work to do. But still, it would be nice to have somebody keep track of what we're doing out there. And also, you used a phrase, and I don't think it was meant in this way, but it would be fun to do, is to have a fair heritage area, a space out there that talks about this land and what it did. And then finally, bringing the tribes into it. This waterway has been occupied for 1,000 years. Carol, I only mean this a little bit joking, but can we see if there was some Kanema Indian activity at our Wayside Park and get a grant to have a historic preservation of that? So that's something that communities along the Willamette are going to be thinking about as we move ahead towards development in Oregon City, but of what was the history. So the city of Canby owns a stretch of the Willamette River there, and I don't know what the history of it. I know it was the end of the logging road trail where the timber was put into the water and sent down to Portland to build houses there. But what about before that? So.
Did you want me to talk to that?
We don't have time tonight.
Okay. Fair
but
enough.
You just take care of that, would you? You're
sure.
That's probably only a couple year project, right, Carol? Any other questions or comments for Carol or Sandy or Katie on the presentation? No, not seeing any hands going up. Again, thank you for the hard work on this, and definitely some very actionable items for us to be able to integrate as we continue to grow as a city, and how do we hang on to our heritage in our buildings and our surrounding areas. So there will be, I'm sure, a lot more conversation on this coming up over the next couple of years. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. Carol,
Absolutely.
thank you. Katie, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Sandy gives a thumbs up as well. So
Sorry, I don't know how to raise my hand on this.
oh, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just want to thank Carol and Katie for doing such great work, and I really enjoyed working with them on this. We did a lot together, and they did the brunt of it. But to answer Councilor Parker's comment, I will make sure that we work with them and this plan and integrate whatever policies we can into a comp plan update, because we need to do an overall comprehensive plan update for the city. And so this is integral work that really is going to help us get this component into the comp plan. And we definitely will make sure we can include language that is applicable to the city and not, you know, like agricultural lands or whatnot. So it's really going to help with creating this chapter for the comp plan, because the bulk of the work has been done now. So I look forward to that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Sandy.
Anytime.
All right. Well, thank you all for the work session. Greatly appreciate it. We're going to break here for the next roughly 6 minutes before we kick off into our city council meeting. So, Carol, Katie, and Jamie, Sandy, thank you for being part of our work session. We greatly appreciate it. And I will see everyone else back here shortly. Thanks a lot.
Thank you guys.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, Canby. Welcome to the Canby City Council regular meeting for June 3rd, 2020. I want to welcome you all if you're watching through the website, on YouTube, or wherever. Thank you for joining us. The City Council this evening started early. We had an initial work session to discuss we had a presentation on the historic preservation plan that's been working on by our Historic Landmark Commission. Some very exciting things afoot with that, and being able to incorporate that into some definitely some city design standards and projects as we move forward here in the next couple of years. So we've got appears a quorum. Everyone is in attendance, so you hopefully are seeing us with our fancy wood paneling backgrounds, and city staff is with us as well. So thank you all for being here. We're going to open things up with communications. Amanda, Melissa, anything on that end?
Hi, good evening. This is Amanda Ziver. Just a couple announcements to start the meeting off tonight from our library. Just so everybody knows that starting Monday, June 8th, the library's book drop will be open 24/7 again, as it was before. Patrons should anticipate 3 to 4 days for the items to be taken off their account, since the books will sit and the DVDs as well for a couple of days for quarantine. But that book drop will be open starting on Monday. And then the following Monday, June 15th, the library will start curbside service, and they'll be contacting patrons that had books on hold during this period and releasing those by appointment at curbside service. So that'll be happening in the 15th. And that's all. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. It's good to hear how that's slowly but surely coming back to life there in the library, for sure. Saw the picture.
And they're doing a bunch of other things as well, all available on their website. They have summer fun activity bags that children can pick up. The dates, times, when that stuff's available is all on the library website, or people can call the reference desk, which is available Monday through Friday from 10 to 4 for any questions. Staff will be available.
Wonderful. Thank you, Amanda. Appreciate that. Next on the agenda is citizen input and community announcements. Melissa, did we have anything sent in or for us for tonight?
We did not receive anything. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move into mayor's business to start with this evening. So I'd just like to take a moment and just make a couple of remarks on some comments, some reflections maybe on the events that have been occurring here around the world, really, in regards to George Floyd. I'm not going to sit here, nor can I, and pretend I have the answers. I don't have the answers. I wasn't brought up in a home where hate was taught or tolerated. My wife and I don't raise our children in a home where hate is taught or tolerated either, of any kind or of any one. I know that I am part of the solution. I find what happened to George Floyd tragic and very sad. I find the rioting and destruction that is occurring depressing and sad as well. It angers me because I don't understand the need to go to such destruction. I understand protesting and I understand demonstrating. That is important, and that is getting the word out, and that is getting people to listen. The killing of more people breaks my heart. When I joined the city council and when I became mayor, they don't teach us how to deal with pandemics. And they don't teach us how to deal with the death of teenagers to suicide in a community. They don't teach you how to respond to the death of another human 2,000 miles away. And they don't teach you how to deal with how that ripples to your own community in the form of hurt, in the form of rage, It's a lot of on-the-job training in regards to that and what we do. I asked a question last night of my kids to get them to understand why the demonstrating and why the protesting. And the response was, well, to get people to listen. And I said, to listen to what? And that's the challenge, where I know that I need to do a better job of trying to explain why and what it is that we need to be listening to and listening for. I don't know how many more decades we can go as a society and allow what is happening and has been happening to go on. I do not have the answers. I don't pretend to have the answers. I just know that I'm trying to understand the human condition in different contexts and situations, and that it starts with me. I know that treating people with respect and dignity also starts and ends with me. It's the person that each and every one of us looks at in the mirror every morning. That is where it should and needs to start. We are a great community. We have our opportunities and we have our challenges. I hope that we can see what is going on, listen to what's going on, and find ways that we can correct what is going on. This week, I've met a couple of times with our police chief regarding mostly the restraining tactic that was used on Mr. Floyd by the Minneapolis Police Department. And it was an eye-opening conversation. That is, the tactic that was used is a lethal force tactic. And that is not one that our police chief condones of our police officers to use. It is a last-ditch method to restrain somebody towards a lethal force situation. That is not something that our chief, like I said, condones, and nor do they teach that for Canby PD. I have tremendous amount of respect for police officers. Our police department has done a tremendous amount of goodwill. Chief Smith, I give him a lot of credit for the work that he has done over the last 10 years to improve and change the culture and the image of Canby PD. And it's unfortunate that we have a situation where one individual, or in this case, frankly, 4 individuals, tarnish the good work of so many other police departments that don't have that as their tactics and don't work in that fashion. I wish that I could say it's isolated, but this has been going on far too long. So those conversations are being had in City Hall. We look at the greater scope of the things that are going on and around in our community, and there are people in our community and business owners fearful of that trickling down to Canby. We had a situation yesterday in Oregon City. I was talking to another mayor that's also in rural Clackamas County, that business owners are putting up boards on their windows. It's a real situation in that regards. I'd like to think that Canby can demonstrate, protest, hold vigils, in a calm fashion, come together and work on course corrections, solutions, and have those conversations. It is a challenging time for sure. So I hope that over these next couple of days, we really take a look in each one of us as city councilors and leaders in this city, across the city, on the things that we can do to make those changes. It's hard to go into other pieces after that. So most of it's can wait till the next meeting. But I will say for those of you on the council and those watching at home, we are in the midst of a city manager search. The posting for that position closed on the 31st, June 1st, and we had over 70 candidates apply for the position. So the recruiting firm that we have has some work to do to narrow that down and bring us a list of candidates here within the next couple weeks. So our timeline, and Amanda, correct me if I'm wrong, is still to complete the process here July 10th. So we'll be having conversation on how that's going to look in terms of meeting and interviewing the final candidates. If that's a Zoom setting like this, is this a bring to town? How do we do those things? So we're going to have to sharpen our technological savvy pencils and figure out how to make that be. So, but those are worth other item to mention this evening for you all. I'm going to go into councilor liaison reports, and I'm going to start I'm going to go clockwise on my screen, and that would be Councilor Parker.
Mayor, first a question for you about your report concerning the city administrator search and 70 applications that the headhunter we've hired is going through. Are we paying him for that?
That is part of the package, yes.
I thought we weren't going to be paying for anything other than expenses since this was a do-over.
Sorry. Yes, that is.
I was trying to throw you a softball and you swung and you woofed.
So in the greater scheme of things, we're paying in some way, shape, or form, Councilor Parker. So this is part of the do-over package of them reviewing it, yes. So in terms of other additional expenses beyond what was stated at the beginning, this is part of the process. So all in all, the last count I saw was 73 with still a whole nother day of applicants to come in. So they're probably reviewing close to 80 or more. So yes, that portion is part of the contract of taking another pass at finding us a city manager.
Well, and I think it's almost twice of what we had the first go around. So
yes, that is correct.
We'll see what happens. In terms of liaison report, I just have one that I think the community is probably interested in. There was some discussion earlier about the fairgrounds, trying to get some drive-in movies going. And I checked with our staff today, and they have turned in their outline for how they propose to do it to the county's Emergency Operations Center, I believe is the process for that, Brian, where here's how they're going to handle the safety protocols, admission, and that sort of thing. So apparently now they are waiting for word back. They hope to have it next week on whether their plan meets what they want to do. So I'll keep the council informed as we go along, but right now it's in process.
Yeah, it sounds like it's gonna lot of Canby. Well, yeah, there's a number of Canby businesses that are involved in trying to make this come together, which is really great to see. Amanda, a question for you and for the planning team. I don't know what, I know it's county grounds, but is there going to be any need of permitting from us as a city to make this happen?
Not that we're aware of right now.
Okay. If we could look into that, if that's going to be a something that we're needing to be involved in, if we can help in any way, that would be great. I know that they're having to do some rigging construction and some things like that. So I'd like for us to be as customer service friendly in this regards as we can be, and partner with the county in whatever way we can to see this come off and do a couple of fun socially distanced drive-in movies this summer.
Actually, Brian, you raised a good point. I had forgotten about that, but yes, we do have a local company that is willing to pay for the timber and the construction to build a permanent screen out there. And I bet that requires a building permit, so.
More than likely, yep. Thank you, sir.
This is Joe. Can you hear me?
Not really, Joe. You need to yell a little bit louder.
Okay, sorry. That you came up with one of the answers, which is if there's going to be a building of a structure, it's probably going to need a permit. But the good thing about our noise ordinance is that the county fairgrounds don't need a variance. So the only thing they'll have to do if they build something is probably get a permit.
Excellent. Thank you. Councilor Spoon?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Couple of things. First, graduation is coming up, and I just want to congratulate all of the high school seniors, the 8th graders, and the 6th graders. It is a very unusual end to the year, and you're all moving on to something new. But congratulations. And also, I want to thank the school district, because I think that they've put a lot of work in making each of those transitions celebratory in the best way possible. I know that they've done a lot of awesome stuff for the seniors at the high school. My son's graduating from 6th grade, and they had a whole drive-through graduation ceremony today. And I really appreciate that. I think that that's taken, they're all going through something new. This whole process has been a lot of work, but for them to take that extra time and energy to invent a new wheel, I think that the kids and the parents and the community really appreciate it. So I wanted to thank those efforts. I saw Canby Now podcast did an interview with Chief Smith at our police department, where he answered some questions related to current events. And I just wanted to thank Chief Smith for how thoughtful and honest those responses were. And I think that some of the words he said help us move towards healing, because I think before we can heal a pain, we have to acknowledge what that pain is. And I think his answers were really reassuring to me. And I really appreciated how much thought he's put into the relationship between Canby and the community. And I just encourage people, if they have concerns or if they're hurting, or if they wonder what the philosophy and energy of our police department is around these issues of racial bias in policing, around police brutality, to seek that out, because I think that what Chief Smith said was pretty extraordinary and special. And so I just encourage everyone to reach out to that. I wanted to speak to a couple of things you said, Brian, in ways that the community can be, our city and our community can be leaders. I'm sorry, I have a very sick dog who wants some water. Hold on. Brian, can you get Stewie some water? Oh, at home meetings. Ways that our city can be leaders in community engagement. And there's a couple of things. One, there's a couple of cities across the country this week that have been doing some resolutions. And I want to first say that I think Chief Smith has done an outstanding job of hiring, developing, and training a police force that's representative of the community. And I know that he cares about the quality of officers we get. Chief Smith won't always be our chief. And I think that there's something that we could do in possibly a resolution like some of these other communities are doing that prohibit the police force from hiring police officers with histories of things like excessive force, racial bias, dishonesty related to the reporting, investigation, or prosecution of a crime or misconduct of another office, or discrimination on a number of levels. And I think a resolution kind of asking our police force to I believe that they do that now. First, let me say, I believe that they do that now, but I think that it's a good way for our city to be a leader in communicating our commitment to making sure that our police force acts equitably. And then the other thing that I would ask you to consider, these are just things I'm asking you to consider, is Happy Valley recently got some money, and I'm hoping that we could pursue this and maybe get a grant to get a request for proposal for a diversity, equity, and inclusion task force that would act like a city committee that could look at different things the city is doing and make sure that a lens is applied for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that voices that are underrepresented in government have an avenue through that to have conversation about whether it's new policies, ordinance, events, build relationships with the police department, that could be a way in us furthering community engagement so that we can be solution oriented and be leaders in how communities move forward, heal, and create progress towards some of the pain that's being felt. So I just want to throw those out, and I'd love to send you an email. I actually have a copy of Happy Valley's RFP. I got it from one of their counselors. But I'd love to have further conversation about it. And I think that we are of similar minds that Canby as a city can be a leader in community solutions.
Great. Thank you, Congressman, for those. I appreciate that. And yeah, if you have those, I'd like to see those, please.
Absolutely. I'll send them over tomorrow.
Great. Thank you. Councilor Berge.
I'd just like to quickly touch on with things opening back up. I think everybody should, that feels comfortable, go out and support your local restaurants. I know a lot of people did that the entire time, but now as they're trying to open back up, it's just getting down there and getting them feeling like things are starting to come back to normal as well really helps out. I know I ran into Councilor Parker the other night down at Wayward, and I know that I went to a couple of the restaurants in the last couple of days, and it's really nice seeing everybody down there again and getting that normalcy back. So just like to urge everybody that feels comfortable getting down there, get down there and support your local businesses.
Thank you, Councilor Berge. Appreciate that. Councilor Hensley. Technical difficulties, maybe. All right, Councilor Varwig.
Thank you. I don't have a whole lot tonight. I'm excited to announce that the library board is actually going to be meeting again this month for the first time since February. So we're excited for that meeting. That'll be on the 16th, and we are saying goodbye to Roger, who has termed out on the library board. So we are looking forward to having a meeting in there in the Willamette room to say goodbye to him. Other than that, I have nothing to report until next month.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Council President Dale.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Nothing to report from Canby Utility until the next meeting. And I just want to thank you for expressing the heart of Canby tonight. It has been surreal to watch, and I know the phrase "that is not us" gets used over much and tritely, but it truly is not us in Canby. So thank you, Your Honor, for your leadership and your expression of Canby's compassionate heart. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. It's like recapping it with my wife, right? I mean, gosh, I've been going through so much of this, like over the last 100 years or so, or more. And I remember living down in Southern California after the Rodney King verdict, and being able to look north from where I lived in down south and see the smoke billowing out of the LA area at that time. And it's just hard that we've not learned and not been able to get to a better place in the last 20, 30 years. So, like I told my kids that I think it's going to be, I was hoping that it would be our generation that this would dramatically improve. And I think it's going to end up following to our kids' generation. The Berge daughters and the Parker children and the Spoon Waffle kids and the Dale kids, Hodson kids. I mean, Hensley and Varweek. I mean, just the group that's graduating in a pandemic is those visionaries that are coming up, and hopefully they have the answers, and hopefully we will listen to those answers. So,
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
We all just received an email on a possible gathering, and so I think we should. No, let me look at this first. Let me get back to you.
Yeah, let's.
I'll get back. I'm just trying to see this thing, and I'll let me look at it, and then I'll talk later.
Okay. Well, yeah, we can chat about that. I think there are some details still evolving on that, Trig, and we'll chat with that in a little bit later. Okay. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, can you hear me okay? There we go. Our city recorder says that it's okay for us just to do a blanket on the reappointment, but with your indulgence, I would like to read the names because we don't get to say thank you very much.
Yeah, I agree.
So if that's okay with you, sir, I'll go ahead and read them.
Absolutely.
I move to approve the consent agenda, which consists of the minutes of the May 20th, 2020 Joint Planning Commission and City Council work session and regular meeting. And then the reappointments to the Bike and Pedestrian Committee of Russell Heineman, Mindy Monacuco, and Shannon Hale. Reappointments to the Budget Committee of Jason Padden and Michelle Hensley. And my personal thanks for both of you re-upping for that big job. The reappointment to the Canby Public Library Board of Judy Jarash, and the reappointments to the Heritage and Landmark Commission of Judy Jarash and Jennifer Giller, and the reappointments to the Traffic Safety Commission of Robert Cambra and Janet Bailey.
I'll second.
Motion's been made by Councilor Dale and seconded by Councilor Hensley to approve the consent agenda, which include the minutes of the May 20th, 2020 Joint Planning Commission and City Council work session and regular meeting, reappointments of Russell Heineman, Mindy Monacuco, and Shannon Hale to the Bike and Ped Committee, Jason Padden and Michelle Hensley to our Budget Committee, Judy Jarash to our Canby Public Library Board, and then Judy Jarash pulling double duty, and Jennifer Giller to our Heritage and Landmark Commission, and Robert Cambra and Janet Bailey to our Traffic Safety Commission. All those in favor? Seeing, I believe, 6 hands. Anyone opposed? Not seeing any. So that carries 6-0. And to your point, Council President Dale, there is a great there's a great need for additional people in our community to step forward and serve in this capacity. We do a lot here as a city council, but we get a lot of input and we get a lot of ideas, and we get a lot of healthy dialogue from all of our committees and those people that are on the committee. So for all of you that have been reappointed, thank you for continuing to serve in that capacity. We appreciate it. New business here is the topic of the cancellation of July 1st, 2020 City Council meeting. That is 4th of July week. So I put it out there. It is a Wednesday. I don't know what everyone's plans are. Councilor Spoon has her hand up. Yes.
And unless a lot of people have plans where they wouldn't be able to access the internet, if there's stuff to address, I know we have a lot kind of coming up, especially with hiring and whatnot. I would prefer to have the meeting, but of course, if people are unavailable because of, I mean, it's like this is probably the first year where a lot of people aren't going somewhere that might usually. So if there's business, I'd like to keep the meeting. I think it's important. We missed a couple of meetings already this year because of COVID. But if it's going to be an issue for quorum, then I see we often cancel that meeting for quorum.
Nope. Appreciate that. Thank you, Councilor Spoon. Yeah, I know we've got another meeting here this month. I suppose we can decide as we get closer, and Melissa and I can talk agenda items and if there's burning items that we need to put on there, or if there's things that we want to put in the agenda for conversation. With it falling on a Wednesday, it's kind of that not exactly a lot of, I don't know what's open. I know there's counties open, but I don't know, campgrounds and state parks and things like that look like. So yeah, if you've got thoughts on agenda items for that, please let me know. I will talk with Melissa. Council President Dale, yes.
I just wanted to encourage the council. It doesn't happen very often, fortunately, but I'd encourage us to do our best to keep our Wednesdays open in late June, early July, as we get into the evaluation phase for the city administrator. We'll have some extra work to do.
That is, yes, the following week after the 4th is where we're probably looking at a lot of, we're not sure yet what that's going to look like, but that will be when we're doing our interviews and whatnot for the city administrator position. So thank you for putting that out there. So, all right, I'll work with Melissa and we'll talk about it and see what's on the agenda, and we'll bring it back up at the next meeting. Melissa, does that work for you? I'm sorry, I missed that.
Yes, that sounds good. Thank you.
Melissa, you sounded vaguely like Amanda on that one.
I'm just sitting closest to the microphone.
The joys of technology. All right, well, we're going to move in then into our two ordinances this evening. First ordinance is ordinance number 1528. We're looking at some master clean and some janitorial services. Amanda, what do you know?
Thank you. Yes, this is an ordinance to continue janitorial services with Master Clean. Master Clean has been providing services for the city of Canby for over 20 years. We'll give them also just a little shout out right now for the additional work that has been done by this firm over the past 3 months. Really stepped up, charged very, very little, and has been in the building quite frequently and doing a great job. So this is the ordinance to continue services for fiscal year 2021. There has not been an increase in the last several years. This year they are proposing approximately a 4.5% increase to provide services for all city buildings.
Great. No, they do a great job, and I really appreciate, as you said, Amanda, the amount of extra work that they've done on City Hall. during the pandemic, as well as the over the last couple of weeks with our own bout with it there within City Hall. So, questions, comments for Amanda on the contract and whatnot regarding this?
Just a quick reminder to those that are tuning in, we do these as ordinances because they're above the signature level of our city administrator. So that's why you get to see those tonight.
Thank you, sir, for mentioning that. I appreciate that. There is a proposed motion on page 167 of our packets. If someone would like to take us through that.
Sure, Mr. Mayor. I move for ordinance number 1528, authorizing the mayor and interim city administrator to execute a contract with Master Clean Inc. for janitorial services for the various city facilities, not to exceed $60,583, and repealing ordinance 1509.
I'll second.
Motion has been made by Council President Dale and seconded by Councilor Varwig to approve ordinance number 1528, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and interim city administrator to execute a contract with Master Clean Incorporated for janitorial services for various city facilities not to exceed $60,583, and repealing ordinance 1509 to come up for a second reading on June 17th, 2020. If all of you will take a moment and unmute. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That carries 6-0. Thank you all very much on that one. Ordinance number 159, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and interim city administrator to execute a contract with Kin Technology to provide our technical support for City Hall and the library and beyond.
Thank you. Kin Technology has been providing IT services to the city since 2006. They have also provided a proposal again for fiscal year 2021. They have about a 10%, $10,000 increase included in this year's proposal. Also, they have increased the number of technician services on site because we've had a little bit of a greater need, and they've had a need to be on site a little bit more, well, actually quite a bit more. In the past, they've guaranteed or a minimum of 36 to 40 hours a week and always have one of their representatives, if not two, on site. This new contract increases that to 44 to 56 hours a week. So approximately up to another 832 hours a year for an additional $10,000.
Okay.
Also,
oh, go ahead.
Just they've had a lot of extra work and have been great in March, April, as a lot of our employees transitioned to working remotely, and we're able to seamlessly do that. And it's been a great service that they provided for us.
Yeah, that was going to be my comment, Amanda. I know they did a ton of work getting a number of city staff people remote and all that great stuff. So another company that we've contracted with that's done a great job for us. So great. Are there any comments or questions for Amanda on this? Councilor Varwig.
Not for Amanda, but I just want to say that I am personal friends with and business associates with the owner of Kin Technology, and so I will be abstaining from any vote tonight on this contract.
Appreciate that, sir. Thank you for that. And again, I will echo Council President Dale from the last one. And these are contracts that are above and beyond the scope of what can just be approved by our city staff. And so they come to us when we draft these contracts. And that's why you get to hear about it and know what services we're hiring out for. If there's no other questions or comments, there is a great motion written on page 177 of our packet, if someone would like to read that. Or not.
All righty, Mr. Mayor. Ordinance 1529, I move for its passage, authorizing the mayor and interim city administrator to execute a contract with Kin Technology, Inc. to continue to provide computer technical services for the city not to exceed $110,000 and repealing Ordinance 1509.
Thank you, sir. Trig, was that you?
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Motion has been made by Council President Dale and seconded by Council Berge to approve ordinance number 1529, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and interim city administrator execute a contract with Kin Technology Incorporated to continue to provide computer technical services for the city not to exceed $110,000 and repealing ordinance 1506. If you will all take a moment to unmute. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that passes 5-0-1. Thank you. I will send it over to Amanda for city administrator business and staff reports.
Just one update to circle back with an item that you had mentioned earlier on the agenda, which is the city administrator recruitment. Received confirmation that there are 75 applications. I believe in the last recruitment, it was just under 60 that were received. The recruiting firm will be conducting their preliminary interviews and making contact with applications June 3rd through 12th. And then probably will be looking, I'm estimating coming back to the council with that information, possibly the week of June 22nd. I think that will be the earliest that he'll be able to compile all of those materials and get it to you in time for you to review with him. And you are correct that July 10th is the date that was listed on the profile for the final interviews. And Phil McKinney from Peckham and McKinney will be providing some information on some recommendations on what that process might look like and be meeting with you to finalize those processes.
Great. That's 75. That's pretty great. So, great. Any other updates, Amanda, at all?
One update that also circling back to a comment that Councillor Spoon had made earlier on the agenda regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion. The city has a position for a confidential administrative assistant that is primarily supporting the human resource department. We recently had a person leave that position and we recruited and had another new person come in. The new person that came in is a recent graduate from PSU with a bachelor's degree in human resources. And in the interviews with her, one of the questions that we asked all candidates is what areas they're interested in, whether it's recruiting or employee engagement, all kinds of benefits, job descriptions. And without hesitation, this person said diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we were very excited about that because we have a lot of different pieces throughout our policies internally relative to diversity in the workplace. And we also would like to expand internally as a city organization. And this person has been tasked with developing some of those policies that we'll be hopefully implementing internally. So I think that fits right in with all the discussions that were had earlier this evening. So I just wanted to let you know that.
Great. I appreciate that. That's wonderful to hear. Great. Anything else?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay. We have it on the agenda for additional citizen input. Has anything come in, Melissa?
No, we did not receive anything.
Okay. Action review, please.
Okay, you've approved the consent agenda and approved passed ordinance numbers 1528 and 1529 to second readings at the June 17th City Council meeting.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. That brings us to adjournment. I will take a motion to adjourn from our meeting.
So moved. I move to adjourn.
Thank you, Councilor Barwig.
Second.
And it's seconded by Councilor Barwig. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, Council, for being here. The city staff, greatly appreciate it. Please stay healthy and stay safe. And we'll see everyone in 2 weeks. Have a great night. We're adjourned.